It's great when you hear these things and you think about it, you go, oh yeah, I got that. And it's like, no, bring it to the top of the mind and really practice it. And this whole thing about, the equal consideration, I want to say this from, a woman who leads an organization at the top, right? It can get really lonely at the top. Many of you who report to people up, right? And I know I felt this all the time, and I report to a board, right? When I get a call from my board chair, right? Oh, Cliff is calling, and immediately gotta, right? So there's somebody who's always like ahead of us, above us, and we're always performing for somebody, right? But I want to ask those of you who report to people and think about how you feel when you have to go in for that meeting and how you put that person, right, up on that other pedestal. I want you to stop and think about that person got up that morning and had the same type of day you did, right? That person probably tended to their family, did the balancing act, right? She, if you report to a she or a he, right? I'm going to say, but she is just like you. And she might need you to step back a minute and not treat her like the boss that day. And when she comes to you and says, I really want and value your opinion, believe her because she means it. And give it to her respectfully, right? Give it to her in an appropriate manner, maybe one-on-one, not in front of other people, right? But don't always look at that person who's sitting in the C-suite or at the top as somebody who is, more or bigger or better. I say this comment a lot because I know that my position as the president and CEO of the New Jersey Business and Industry Association, by title, is a powerful position in the state of New Jersey. I've accepted that, and I lean into that, and I know that's who I have to be because I need to garner that respect, and I need to have the confidence when I go out there in order to own that position. But when I wake up every single day, you know who I am? I'm Michele Siekerka, and that's all I am. I'm Michele Siekerka. I'm Caitlin's mom. I'm Victoria's daughter. I'm Neil's wife, right? And I'm a colleague. When I'm in a room with my colleagues, I call them a colleague. When they say she's the boss, they say, I'm your colleague. We work together. Right? So I just want to say that to all of you because there's a lot of women who are in the C-suite who really mean it when they say to you, right? Treat me like you are equal to me because you are equally important to me. And you need to hear that, and I want you to think about that the next time you go and you have that discussion with that person that you report to, and just break down that barrier a little bit because she will appreciate it from the other side. With that, I want to invite up to the stage some amazing executive leaders for our last session today. As I said, and I said this yesterday for those of you who were here and had the opportunity to hear yesterday's executive panel, these women are the perfect example of why I love what I do each and every day as an advocate for New Jersey business. Because these women represent amazing companies here in the state of New Jersey. And when we advocate every day on your behalf, for the issues that you need in New Jersey, I could proudly stand before anyone and tell them this is the leadership that we have in New Jersey that we should be proud of. And they are amazing people who lead great organizations, who support great communities, who make a difference in the state of New Jersey. We have with us, that's right, give them a round of applause. And check out their full bios at the cue card, okay? We have Paula Ferreira, CPA Assistant Office Manager at Forvis. Give a wave. We have Monica Smith, who's the CEO and founder of Marketsmith. Monica. We have Cathey Haigh, who's the Senior VP and CFO at Hussmann, which is a Panasonic company. And we have Marilyn Petite, who's the Vice President of Marine Services at Marotta Controls. She brought her fan club. All right, ladies. So we've spent 2 days talking about leadership, and I want to start by asking each of you, and Paula, I'm going to start with you, please. What leadership qualities are most critical in today's rapidly changing business environment?
Good morning, everyone. I would think that the biggest leadership qualities, especially in this world, is flexibility, right, and adaptability. I think we all have seen things changing. We all have seen things really going in ways that we weren't planning for, but being able to take the moment, adapt to it, taking control of it, being decisive in our decisions, and being flexible, being able to pivot, being able to take the best traits of our team around us. We've all heard some very good guidance over the last day And I think that a lot of it is resounding, right? We've heard that we need to not really differentiate people's roles, really view our peers and view the people around us as contributors to our success. And I think staying flexible in that is key, and making sure we value those around us is also an important trait.
Thank you so much. And Cathey, do you want to continue on that thought, please?
Sure. I think from my perspective, another key point is staying true to yourself as a leader, creating that consistent leadership environment. It helps to build trust within the organization. And when you are presented with times and you have to make some difficult decisions, you'll find it helpful to get that buy-in if the organization already has a level of trust in your decision making and can almost guess what your approach is going to be to tackle a significant problem.
And then Monica, staying on this theme though of leadership, right? How has your leadership style evolved over the years, and what experiences shaped those changes? And then how do you stay your authentic self through those changes?
So I think that the key is that business has changed dramatically. And, you know, we used to go through periods of time where business was changing 10 years at a time, then 5 years at a time. Now business in terms of the environment, shareholder value, things that are important, are shifting every 2 years. And so aside from technology and competition and global influences that affect every size business there is, what has really changed for me is that one is that there's more women present. The second is that diversity keeps growing. And the third is that what is really different is the generational realities that are happening in business. And there are just younger women coming into leadership sooner. And that is not only okay, it's helpful. And so for me, I had to drive, because you could only, when I started my business 25 years ago, you only had one idea, which is you had to drive, you had to fight, you had to compete. And it was you and I have talked about this before, you've said it, you know, in terms of leadership and being alone, and it is lonely. But today it's less lonely. I just feel it's less lonely today, right? I feel like it's okay to have relationships and conversations, and you're not my competition. You are my partner, right? And so, and I think that is a big deal. Like I've got a gal here that we're competitors, and we just met for the first time, had conversations, we just hugged, embraced like we were cousins and hadn't seen each other,
Nice.
right? And so that's the reality of it. It is that today, as more women are coming forward, more women are present and demonstrating a different way, right? So for me, I have evolved in that I now not only want more opinions, I want to have almost everybody's opinion. I think that, you know, people say, oh, have a seat at the table. Open the freaking door, let them in the room. Right. And here's one thing I'm gonna say that I find to be really interesting. And I know there's like mentoring and coaching and all those things. Here's what I do now in these meetings. If you're invited into a room, and I like to invite, it was just said in one of the last things I was just in, you know, having people there to be able to hear, men, women, whoever, what a meeting is like in terms of at certain levels. When you're in a meeting with me, no matter what, even if we're running a little late, every single person before we end that meeting has to tell me an idea, something that they're thinking, or something they don't understand, so every voice is even heard. So they're not just sitting there, they are actually participating. And that's a massive, because it used to be like, oh, everybody else, you can listen, and I've got something to say. Now I'm sitting there saying very little and listening to everyone.
That's fabulous. It's fabulous. And those voices are so significant, right, in the decision-making process. Staying on leadership style, Marilyn, I'm going to come to you. Okay. The role of emotional intelligence. We hear about this all the time, right? Can you speak a little bit to that?
Yes, so myself, first of all, I'm not very good at public speaking, so you have to forgive me. But emotional intelligence is super important, and how I lead is really by example. So with a woman in the workplace and everyone in the workplace, I feel like if I work very hard, they'll see that and also work hard as well. So I try and really lead by example, but as I've grown into my leadership role, I find that I can't do everything. And it used to be, I would think I had to do everything. And I'm sure all of you think you have to do everything. The stronger you build your teams, I've built a really strong team, I realize I can go on vacation. I can, do things other than work. So yeah, I think from my perspective, just being open and my authentic self to the team has really worked for me, like being emotionally available.
Absolutely. And, I think I just want to piggyback a little bit because you talk about this whole idea of, and it's being a role model, right? Work hard. People see you work hard. They work hard too. And I think about post-Superstorm Sandy in New Jersey, right? And at the time I was at DEP. I was New Jersey water girl as we were going underwater, right? But many in this room who worked with me at DEP remember the days, 24 hours at the Rock, which is the emergency center, right? Why was I there at 5 a.m. in the morning until midnight at night? Because my team was there. They had to be there, right? You got to be in the trenches with them. That whole thing of being in the trenches with your team is so true. And I know what Marotta controls, right? There you go, right? Like they are fist pumping because this is a strong team. And I could just tell talking to these ladies today that you absolutely are a role model to all of them. Congratulations to you. And thank you for sitting up on this stage today. Courage. You're doing an awesome job. It's fantastic. Let's talk about bringing up that next generation. Cathey, I'm going to flip back to you. How do we nurture our future leaders? And how do you do it within your organization? A big organization at that.
Right. I think it's very important to start early. I think that I encourage my team, and I'm not afraid to do so as well, but I have leadership development sessions starting with new team members, early career, first couple of years, just to help get them comfortable with meeting and having conversations at the senior leadership level. I help give them advice and, at least spend time with them so they're comfortable walking through my door, asking a question and having a conversation. That level of development is critical to succession planning, especially. I think that our organization focuses heavily on leadership development and development overall at pretty much all levels of the organization, as well as succession planning and understanding who's going to be our leaders for the future, what skills do they need, and how do we spend time developing those skills and providing avenues to learn new things and understanding what our people want to do. So it's a heavy focus for our organization.
Paula, how about at Forvis?
I think what you just said, I think, is perfect and spot on. I think the observation, the ability to take the younger team members, giving them the opportunity to partake in meetings, even if they think they don't have a voice, but giving them the voice, allowing them to witness, to observe the apprenticeship model, right? That is a big thing. In the accounting profession, you see the track, right? It starts, at staff, and it goes all the way to partner. But when you're at staff, a lot of people think that they don't have a voice. Giving them the voice, the opportunity to really sit in a room and witness it, and everybody contributes differently, recognizing everyone's talents differently and rewarding those talents and making sure that you're giving them small victories that they feel that they've accomplished something and feel that they can tackle it, giving them that opportunity to really feel victorious in any situation.
I do want to say, though, that I do think it's important, we're coming into certain generations that are used to now getting rewarded for second place, third place, fourth place. And that mentality piece is, we can't go too empathetic, right? We have to have expectations because we have to recognize that people are very capable. And not everybody recognizes their own capability. So the two things that I think are really important and that I think that we're still really, invite them only into the room, let them have a voice, But you have to set expectations that I have really high expectations of you. And those expectations are this, this, and this. This is where we're going. This is where you fit into it. And this is what's going to need to be done in order to demonstrate that I've made a good choice. I'm here to help you along the way. But you ultimately just remember, intellectual curiosity is absolutely, we didn't talk a lot about it, over the last couple of days, but that is a sense of where you have to have your own, like many of these women here, you're at a certain level, they're pioneers. There's nobody that's before them. You scratched, crawled, maybe knocked out a few folks, maybe it was a little ugly. No, that's true. It's true. It's true. It's true. I mean, hopefully we recognize today that we're each other's sisters rather than that. But back in the day, competition was competition. You did have what you had to do. Today's a little different, but you still have to be your own person. You still have to lean into a changing economy, working with different generations, whether or not you are a leader or aspire to be a leader, or you are going to just be in your position. The key is if you want to get someplace better than you were the day before, you have to lean into that yourself, and you have to have the conversations, not just like, oh, how did you get here? Because to be honest with you, how Michele got here and how I got here are going to be vastly different than you, because there's a few more women for you to stand on those shoulders. And right now, to be quite honest with you, I know there's a bunch of guys here too, but I'll say it. Michele is like, so here's the firecracker. This is why she leaves me to the last conversation. Is because, look, women work really hard. They are agile, they work hard, they're multitaskers, and they can take on the work. So it's great to have a company of women. And not to say it's not good to have a company of men. Men have, but women can work. And so there's a lot more opportunities for you to get ahead. But I still want to be able to say that self-reliance and that ability to be able to better yourself, coming to events like this, meeting people, but you've got to read, you've got to learn, and you have to be willing to fail over and over again in order to have wonderful women like this open that door, give you a seat, and some time, their time.
And not quit when you fail.
Yeah.
Not quit when you fail, right? You gotta, and then for each other, if you see someone failing, right, grab them, throw them a lifeline, and then also, dust them off, figure out what happened, debrief on it. Right? And then come back and say, all right, we're not going to repeat this again. We learned from it, right? But move on.
And it's also important to set clear expectations to the teams so that they understand, to your point, like if you don't set the clear expectations and then they're not successful, and also spending a lot of time doing one-on-ones with your high potential employees, ensuring maybe even skip levels for some high potential employees, where you go down 2 levels and say, how is the organization actually doing a couple levels down? I think that's really important, getting everyone's voice and not just maybe your direct report. So we spend a lot of time trying to hear everyone's voice.
Yeah, and I think you can evolve, right, too? You're allowed to evolve. You're allowed to be in a room, to have your voice heard, to hear other voices, and then say, oh, that does make sense, or that I can connect to that. And you can evolve and change based upon being informed by more people than you were the day before.
I think it's feedback, right? I think a lot of what we're discussing is giving that feedback, not being afraid to give that feedback, and also receiving it. Sometimes it's human nature, we get defensive, but feedback is meant to improve, right? We all are striving to be something better every day. I think, my ultimate goal is always, I'm never where I want to be. I always want to be achieving the next thing. But I do the same thing with my team. I give them the feedback, and it's good and it's bad. It's right, which ways we can be a little bit better so that the next situation is easier. So we use it as stepping stones. Every challenge brings opportunity, and we have to focus on the opportunity and not so much the challenge.
Everything is an opportunity, right? Take every challenge and turn it into an opportunity, make lemonade from the lemons. We've heard it all, right?
Yeah.
But it sounds easy, and it's like, yeah, I get it. But, tactically, how do you lean in and how do you take on that difficult situation, especially when you know that your decision and the result of that decision may affect somebody who is stakeholder, a close colleague, someone who doesn't see it coming, and you have to like deliver that message. Can you give some hints to our future leaders and our current leaders about how we do that?
It's hard, would be my response, but I think you have to keep telling them the whole time how they're doing. It can't be at review time or once every 6 months. There should be a lot of feedback how someone's doing in any organization, at least from my perspective. There should never be a surprise, right? If they're failing, you should be helping them to succeed. Never let them just fail. So my thing would be really communicate.
I'm going to say, I'm sorry. A woman,
It's okay.
it's bad. I know. It's going to shut off soon. But I'm going to say one word that I think is important, and it's intent. And I think everybody has to get really comfortable and with the intent. And the intent of why you're giving that feedback, when you're giving that feedback, how you're giving that feedback. And I always believe that it's important as a leader, to inform those that are representing at least my brand and my clients' brands, that they're very clear on not what you want, but what is good for the greater good, for the mission, even if it is hard or challenging, or at the end of the day, somebody's not a good fit. And intent is something that I believe we should be doing master classes on, and we talk about EQ, but I mean it's intent now is because at the end of the day, these are our professions, and we are here for a reason. We're getting to a certain place. And so your intent versus the intent of the mission versus the intent of the team. There could be a couple of different things, but I think the one thing I always find is really important is when we say authenticity, I think trust and intent are important, and when you deliver from that place, it usually goes to in the right place for the right person, at the right person, and it might not be that person's timing, it might not be what they want, but it's going to be better for them in the long run.
It's not personal. It's not personal. It's for the good of the organization. Cathey, would you continue in that thought?
Right. So I think from my perspective, it's giving that feedback real time, I think is important, not waiting, too long. But I also like to step back and look at it from a lens, from the outside looking in, and try to think through, okay, what is their response going to be when I give that feedback? So I'm prepared for that. And it also helps me to think through, am I giving them feedback that is really just my personal perspective on their behavior or the action that they took, or is it truly based on what's needed for the organization? So trying to separate those two. It's easy to try to infiltrate your own personal perspective on something when there are multiple ways to do things, not all of them being yours, being perfect.
Paula, I think you wanted to add something?
Sure. I was just going to say transparency and setting goals, right? If the whole organization understands the goal at hand and we're transparent and make constant communication, I think some of those, even though they're very difficult decisions, people are aware of what's going on because you're constant communication, you're being transparent. So it should come as not a big surprise, right? Because everyone is rowing together towards a common goal. Everyone is aware what the goal is, and then when the decisions have to be made, everyone understands them a little bit better because they've been along the ride.
So I want to flip a little now to work-life balance, because we heard a lot about this over the last couple of days as I went in and out. And today I learned something new, and it really gave me pause to stop and think. I heard the new term today is work-life integration. And when I heard that, I actually sat back a little bit and I said, you know what, that really makes sense to me. Work-life balance, every time I use that term in my own mind, I'm balancing, motherhood, daughterhood, work, right? And I always saw these scales, and I'm an attorney by trade, so I always see the scales of justice. Those are the scales that are always staring at me, right? And I always felt like I was teetering one way or the other. Was I ever really in good equilibrium? Because I knew where the priority needed to be at a certain day. When I heard that thought of integration, I thought, back to intent. I got to make it happen. So how am I going to do it? And how am I going to do it in a way that's going to work for me and all the people that affects, right? Cathey, you want to start off on this one for us?
Sure. I have a real passion for finding work-life integration. I also like that term. But I think for me, it's two key things. One, from a delegation standpoint, making sure I'm truly delegating to my organization the decisions that they should be able to make. That provides more time for me to focus in the areas that I need to focus. And it also provides continued development opportunities for my team and their direct reports as well. I find if I'm opening the Excel workbook more than 3 times in one day, I'm probably doing things I'm not supposed to be doing. And so that's a number one lesson for me. And then secondly is making sure that I'm prioritizing my own needs as part of the process. I started probably 3 or 4 years ago as an example. I get up every morning at 4 a.m. I work out every day. I feel better when I go into the office, when I've moved my body a little bit and have had some activity. When I tried to just schedule it at the end, I found myself working and it would be too late. Then I'd need to go home and fix dinner and all those things would get in the way. And I found that my own personal time ranked about 10th on the totem pole, of all the other things that we had to get done during the day. So when I moved that up first, and yeah, it's a bit of a sacrifice, but it's a great habit when you're able to get up and it's still dark and you go to bed when it's dark. You're getting a full day of daylight is kind of how I look at it. So I turn it into a real positive, and that's really made a difference. There's all sorts of different things you can do from a calendar management and setting aside time, focus time, and those things of priority, put them on your calendar as an example. And I think we all have access to those, but how we actually spend time prioritizing in what we do and making sure we're focused on the right things, I think are key to getting that work-life integration that we're looking for.
Marilyn, I see your head nodding. Please continue.
So for me, I'm retiring in the next year. I'd say it took probably 30 years of my career to be able to figure out a work-life balance. I was the person they talked about yesterday with the 3 briefcases, bringing them home, working all weekends. Over the last 10 years, I've realized, and I said a little bit earlier, if you have a strong team, you should be able to, it's really developing the team underneath you, which you mentioned as well, right? Then you don't have to worry when you're out of the office, or you can worry less. So that has been really important, and what it also taught me is to not do that to my people. Like, I run the whole Marine organization there, and I constantly say, use your vacation time, use your floating holiday, use this, do not lose any time, right? Because they're all very ambitious, and that's how I was. And I didn't go to family events. I didn't go to a funeral once that I regret like 20 years later, right? You don't have to do that as a woman to be successful anymore. And if your boss thinks you should, or your leadership, that is not where you want to work. Right. You should be able to have a life. Yes, that's right.
No, excellent. I mean, that is such an important point. We discussed this yesterday, and I made the comment that you have to hold your workforce accountable for taking their time off. And you got to ding them if they're not getting off the grid, because you're no good if you don't get off the grid. Yeah. You got to refresh and retool, and then you come back and you're your best performer after you've done that.
And the team appreciates it, right? They appreciate seeing a leader who takes the time for themselves. I know in my organization, I would run out every day at 6 o'clock, attend my kids' soccer games, go home and cook, and then log back on. And I received so much feedback from the team saying, okay, it's good to see that you take the time and you prioritize properly. So prioritization is key. Communication to your team so they know what you're doing. I think back in the day, they used to hide the fact that they were doing these things. I think now it's the complete opposite. You want to show that you can do it. You want to accomplish something, you set that as a goal, you prioritize it, and you make it happen.
100%. Now, I want to go a little personal, if you don't mind, right? Because you're super women. I mean, we're sitting up here and it's like we've solved, haven't we solved like every problem in the world, right? Okay. We make it sound so easy. A lot of this is really practical, and a lot of it comes with maturity in our careers and in our lives, right? I mean, we'll be fair about that. And we all find our own way, as you said, Monica, how I got to where I am. You're all going to find your own way to where you're going to be, and you're going to be fabulous, and you are fabulous today. But on a personal note, if you could share an example of as you were coming up, as you were evolving, where there was a situation that you had to challenge, that you had to lean into, and how you overcame that challenge? How did you reach into yourself, and what was it that you found in yourself to get beyond something? Because we've all had them. We've all had a challenge, right? So who wants to start with my challenge on a personal note? Oh dear. Oh dear.
I mean, my life is an open book, and so I don't like to talk too much about the things that I do in my life, because like when I start speaking, they do the bio or whatever. They say, "Oh, she's did this and this," like, because I have 5 kids, and you know, I think we're one of the largest privately held women organizations in the state, and we also have a animal sanctuary, and so people are like, oh, women are like, oh God, well, what if I don't want to be, and I'm just like, I've got a wife at home, so I go, that's how I get it done, So it's for me, I have learned that my dad was sick. He worked really, really hard, and he was sick most of my life, and he died right after he retired. And so did my mom. And I look at this and I say to myself, they worked, and they always wanted a shore house. And they just never got it. And I just said, I'm a beast. I'm an absolute beast. Anybody who knows me knows I'm a beast. But I also am a beast in life. So I'm into my kids, I'm into everything we do, my marriage. But I sit there and say, I don't want to die young. And we just touched upon it, and when we were talking about like work-life balance, which I think is an absolute load of crap, the way and integration is good, but at the end of the day, you know what the one thing we haven't evolved as, and I've just started to lean into it because my weight was crazy, my cholesterol, all of that stuff, it was gone. I didn't want to be my parents, but yet my health records were showing I was identical to them, if not sped up. So I decided over the last really 3 years leaning into it that I matter. And in order to be really great at me, even liking me, which means putting on my clothes in the mirror and saying, yeah, that's good helmet today, the whole thing, like to me, I know it's important. Because I think that I've struggled a long time, because if you're not taking care of yourself, you're not eating, you're not moving. And movement is everything. It is absolutely, 4 o'clock in the morning is a little more adventurous than, but 5 is, I'm on 5, and I sit there, but I think taking care of yourself is something that I think is really important. And when you do sleep and when you do eat right, and when we start to recognize that events like this, we're not going to just start talking about mentoring, and then we're going to start talking about ourselves and life and health before anything else. How many times have you guys heard over soccer games, missing funerals, like you hear about making dinner? We're still doing all those things. How many times have you heard people say meditation, walking, spending time with my girlfriends, sitting there reading a book, or saying, you know how many times people say, Monica, I'd love to read, but I just don't have time. And I'm just saying, you have to make the time. You just have to make the time. So I think that keeping time for yourself, how much time should a person give to themselves on a daily basis? I mean, that's the question, right?
It's a question for you. Yeah, it's a question for yourself and what works.
Yeah, and I think that, if you're not giving yourself that 30 minutes to an hour every day, however you cut that up, it's not a life well lived. It's not a life well lived, because I think what the greatest thing we can do is say, yes, we did all these things for our family, for our friends, for our parents, for our careers. But at the end, when they needed us to babysit for their kids, when they needed us to take their kids, take their dog, be able to go on that trip, we were able to not only physically do it, we were able to mentally do it. We showed up, we had the money in the bank, and we were able to be like, that's my Nana. That's like, that's my, right?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Paula, did you want to add something?
I was going to say, there's no one size fits all, right? We all have a different approach. We all tackle something a little bit differently. I do find time to read every day. I excuse myself every day at night.
You've passed.
But I think it's it's knowing what's important to you, focusing on that priority, getting the people around you that are going to lift you up and help you achieve that, and pushing forward. I think it's really easy to focus on, we heard before saying no complaints, right? It's easy to focus on the challenges, but focus on the victories. Focus on where we're going and not where we came from, right? I think those are the key things we need to keep pushing forward and keep us moving to the next target. We talked about challenges. I think the question was a challenge. I think challenges occur in every one of our lives, in every situation that we face. I think it's always looking to what lies ahead and why we're going through it. I think that's what's going to make us all victors and really accomplish it. At the end, when we get to an age where we're retiring, we're enjoying life, and really, truly look back on our life and see everything that we've done, we're going to remember the victories, right? We're going to remember how we got there. And I think that's the key, focusing on what we could change and not dwelling on those things that we can't control.
I love the lean in fast so you can get to the other side. It makes all the difference. I can just think about how many times I've said, let's just, let's get it over with and let's get to the other side. Rip that Band-Aid off.
Get
right?
through it.
I remember when I was a kid and my mother, she'd come in, she'd like, rip that Band-Aid.
Yep.
And I was like, why do you do that? That hurts. She's like, because it's off now, right? If I would have you'd be hurting for 5 minutes, right? Rip the Band-Aid off and get on with it, right?
Our organization, one of the mantras we have is celebrate the wins.
Yes.
Because you do have a tendency to dwell on the failures or when you don't win a big proposal. But our business right now is very successful, so take the time out. We'll do like a big award, celebration when something good happens rather than just go on to the next thing. I think that is really important, celebrating the wins.
Yeah, in a world of, sadly, too much negativity, right, that constant positive attitude, and when you're celebrating the wins, everybody feels good.
Yeah.
And you're celebrating your mission and you're celebrating the impact you're having on others. Let's start getting some mics floating around because I want to leave time for questions from the audience, and I know we have some mics out there. And if we don't see a question pop up, I'll jump into another category. But who has some questions for these great ladies? Join us in the conversation. All right, Gail, right up here, right up front. I think we have a mic working its way up. Here comes Danielle with the mic.
Is that working?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you for this great discussion. I have a question that goes back to a topic that came up very early, and it's about young women who are getting promoted. I see a number of women I know, and they're in their early 30s, and they're getting very quickly promoted, which is wonderful, but they're not necessarily getting the support that they need, and they're getting promoted over people, and this was touched on briefly yesterday, people who have 30, 40 years of experience. What piece of advice would you give those women?
So I'm going to go quickly because I think that everybody has. What I do is I share with folks that I believe, especially at the executive team level, that there are people that are identified that have strengths and the why, and then start to ask people to participate in the organizational understanding of whether that person is ready, and then start to get buy-in across. So when I see somebody's coming, I say it's 6 months out, it's 9 months out, and we work towards that, and then we bring the community around them so that they get to step into it slowly, but their peers and their the leadership around them is helping bring them along, because I think it's really important when you just shove somebody into a position, you're in crisis mode, and that just sets that person up for a lot of heartache or potential failure. And I think that women have to feel like they have to kind of suffer through it because they're on they're being fast tracked. But I do find it's important that you pace when you see that you're going to give somebody promotion, when somebody has a strong sense of future where they can gravitate towards more and more responsibility, that it's our responsibility to bring people around who are going to help them, give them advice that they may take or they may not take, right? Which is part of advancing, because you're not going to take all the advice somebody gives you, and that decision-making process helps them.
I would say also the age groups, which people hate to say, millennials and Gen X and Gen Z, what I find in our organization is we lose people if they don't have promotions. And so what we did was we put 5 or 6 levels, our HR team is here, to enable them to feel successful and that they're getting promoted and that their career's on the right track, but not jumping 3 levels where it's very hard to be successful, right? If you're giving them so much responsibility right off the bat. I'm very stingy, Cathey would say, with my promotions, because I want to make sure people are ready, because if they're not ready and it's just to hold on to them, that doesn't work. So the levels have helped our organization because they do feel like there's a growth path, but you're not rushing from this level to this level. So that's been really successful.
Yeah, I agree with your thoughts there. I think what we're seeing as well is just not being satisfied with a lateral move that may give you new experiences and really broaden your chances of being successful as a future leader. When people are promoted based on maybe some successes that they've seen or the skills that they bring to the table, without having the proper leadership skills in place, it can be a challenge if you don't put the right mentors and peers alongside of them. So I try to also emphasize the importance of some certain lateral moves that help bring more experience so they feel like their career is moving forward, but maybe not taking on too much of that leadership responsibility before they're really ready, because the organization doesn't respect them either if they don't come to the table with the right skill set.
True.
Paula, did you want to share a thought?
I was just say the peers around them, right? Giving them a resource to come to. If they are struggling with something, if they've been promoted, in most situations, they're very good at probably 1 or 2 things, right? Giving them the tools to get better at the other things, because we all know a leader has to be well-rounded, and the expectations are pretty high. So a lot of times what I try to do is just be a resource, having that open door policy that questions could be coming in. It's okay to ask for help in certain things. It's not viewed negatively. That sometimes really helps to aid the process along the way.
Do we have another question from the audience? Do we see a hand? It's hard to see up here, so wave and, oh, we do, over here, please. Danielle, yeah, right down over here. Oh, Noble's coming up right behind you. Thanks, Noble.
If you could share a tip, how do you sharpen your critical thinking and your strategic thinking? What have you done throughout your career to help sharpen that critical thinking?
I'll start. I read a lot. So whether it's daily tax reports in the morning or at night, something that refreshes my mind and it's not business related, but it's always staying on relevant news, staying aware of what's going on around me, not just in my organization. I usually think, for me personally, critical thinking is hit better in the morning. I tackle harder tasks in the morning and easier tasks in the afternoon when I'm sharp. Between 4 and 5, 4:30 is my time. But I think, it's, again, no one size fits all, but really staying aware of what's happening, seeking feedback from others in your organization, above you and below you, around you, right? You want to surround yourself with people that are smart and give you good concepts and ideas. I think, for me, that's key.
Anyone else?
I think that that's the critical thinking versus strategic thinking, Bertha, is I think, here's what I think about strategic thinking. If you have an idea and then you bring community around you to think about it. Strategic thinking is about being able to put something out there and flesh it out and have people challenge it. Critical thinking is what happens when basically there's a gun to your head, or what you have to make some big, as you're the only person, in my opinion, in the room that's going to have to make the final decision. And that's something that's very personal. And I think that part of that is, in order to be really great at critical thinking, you have to be extremely informed, exceedingly open to what's happening beyond your 4 walls. And the third is you have to be rested.
Yes.
It's so true, right? Again, we're coming back to that off the grid and how that impacts your sharpness and your ability. I just want to say on strategic planning, because strategic thinking goes into planning, right? For us, it's always staying 2 steps ahead. I want to be ahead of whatever's coming down the line, right? I don't want to be reactive. I want to be proactive. Now, in our business at BIA, we have to react to things that happen every given day on the policy side, right? We get a lot thrown at us, and we have to be able to react. So we need the right critical skills to know how to react, and that's important to build that. But at the same time, an equal parallel path, right, is strategically having a proactive agenda all the time. And what I find is if you have a proactive agenda all the time that's taking you in a strategic direction forward, that somewhere those things merge.
Yeah.
That when you need to react, you've
Great
already
point.
thought about something strategically, that you pivot to where you already were. Guess what? We thought about that. This is exactly that, or I can apply this to that. So it was a great question, because I think those 2 things go hand in hand on equal paths, being reactive and yet being prepared strategically so that you can take a reactive moment and put it right into your strategy for the future. Do we have another question out in the audience? I'm going to ask our avid reader, Paula, either what you're reading right now or what is a favorite read that you would share and why?
Probably The Nightingale.
I don't know.
Oh, The Nightingale.
Oh, absolutely.
I like, it's not what I read right now. I read that one quite some time ago. I'm in a book club, so when my children were young, it was avid sports activities all the time. You built relationships. I believe everything in life is based on relationships that you build. So a lot of us moms formed a book club. So every month we get together, we drink wine, and we read a book. And that was one of our first books. And I liked it because it taught about resilience and kind of what we do today about overcoming obstacles. A lot of the things that we've changed our dynamic and our approach, but the themes are constant. And that was one that really stuck to me. And I keep going back to the author, and I read other books, and then I reread that one as well.
Yeah, in the same vein, different story, different period of time, but The Women by Kristen Hanna. I just read that in the last about 6 or 8 months, and I can't brag on it enough about how emotionally deep it took me, and how you could relate what was going on in there on overcoming challenges and leaning in, right? And how you apply those things right back to yourself. So I think a story in this is you don't have to be reading the next best business book, right, all the time for it to have an impact on how it develops you as a leader.
Absolutely.
Or your critical thinking or your strategic thinking as well. Fair statement?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Did we get another question in the audience, or I'm going to continue in this vein? Oh, great, and we have one over here too. So just one in the back and one over here.
While we're waiting on that, I'm reading How You Live is How You Die. And it is one for everybody, you know, from an easy business book, but I think it's not like a Who Moved the Cheese, but Leaders Eat Last by Simon Sinek is a quick read. I think it's important because I think it's important for people not only as leaders, but more importantly, what to expect from your leaders, because we talk a lot about what we do as leaders, but, you know, we have, you know, a more evolved approach is what people expect from leaders, and when that doesn't get seen or heard or recognized, it gets difficult. But how you live is how you die is just a very basic concept of, you know, the idea that we're all just here individually ourselves. We could have great marriages or wonderful kids or whatever, but at the end of the day, it's just us. And it taught me that in a day, there's a series of hellos and goodbyes. And it's kind of like the idea, like when you have a really tough situation, you know, you kind of go through it. But is there a place in that where you say goodbye to that situation, where you say, okay, there's going to be more challenges ahead, but there's also more joys ahead. And without those challenges, you can't really feel the joy. You can't really feel the successes. And it's not, and what was interesting to me is, and it was very helpful, is this idea that you're supposed to always be happy. And it's just not, it's a falsehood. Like it's something you're chasing. What you're supposed to be is who you are, and try to get better at that, but be okay with exactly who you are. And I think that it's a deeper book if it's not necessarily, you know, but it for me, not listening to all those business books, and not listening to, these ideals, but just something that just helps me to try to be okay with me as a 55-year-old woman that's like sitting there saying, in a very, very dramatic industrial change that's happening with AI and all these other things, and then with my kids becoming older and my marriage going to 30 years, it's like, it's kind of a good thing just to kind of struggle through how to be really okay with me today.
Wonderful. Yeah. Let's go to the question in the back.
Hi. We've talked a lot about young women and the opportunities they're looking for. I guess I just curious for the whole panel, what advice would you give to young women who are looking for these opportunities, looking for promotions and things like that, ways to prove themselves?
Work hard. Take advice from people you respect and trust within the organization. I think that is what made me successful in my career, was really listening. Don't listen to everybody, right? But if they can pick and choose the people in the organization who they respect and they trust, I think that goes a long way to becoming successful in that particular organization. And my only thing would be, I would say, don't be in a rush to get a promotion. It sounds kind of dumb, right? But don't leave a company in 6 or 8 months because you haven't gone to the next level, because 2 years from now, when you've learned more and you've really contributed more, you'll be more successful. And it's hard to, I talk to the people in our organization, men and women, all the time about that. I'm like, please don't rush it. You will be a success, but you're not going to get someone came in my office and they're like, I'm due for a promotion. I'm like, oh, you are? Can you tell me why? So yeah, it is a struggle. But I would say find the good people in the organization and really watch what they do and kind of take advice from them.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of skills that you can continue to build within a position. So not rushing a promotion, I totally agree with that. But I would also say take advantage of opportunities, especially if they are outside of your comfort zone. You will learn the most and grow the most when you're challenged to do something you've never done before or learn something new. I think we heard so much of that from our keynote speaker and all the times that she transitioned from different industries and different fields and learned and grew, and the woman she became so strong throughout her career. I think that was the perfect role model to show how you can really move forward in career, be a little bit patient, take advantage of the situation and learn while you're there, but then take advantage of opportunities that really challenge you as a person and potential leader, and help build skill sets for the future.
And I telepath it out too. If you are looking, I think first of all, both really great, but also, you have the ability every time you're in a conversation to be able to say, I really think this is where I want to go. Tell it out loud. Walk towards it. Tell folks what you want. I find that wonderful. I love when people tell me what they want. Constantly. It helps me. It's less heavy lifting for me.
Paula, did you want to add anything before we go to the last question?
I'm just going to say, find somebody to help you along that way and hold you accountable as well.
Wonderful, wonderful thoughts. Last question.
Okay, I got a question. So a lot of you ladies have been in this working for many years, and as somebody who's starting off and switched careers very frequently throughout my career as a working life, one of the things that's still hard for me is to gain that courage to be able to ask that question, to be able to point out that one thing that needs to get pointed out. So what advice do you have in order to be able to internally gain that courage to actually ask the question and start that conversation? Because it's one thing to just say, just have it, but to me, building that courage takes a little extra. No.
I grew up with 6 boys and a mom that was Irish Catholic, super tough, you know. And I played Little League. I was the only girl that was doing it, and I had gotten hit by a ball, and I was frightened to ever get up to bat again. And I'd cry, and I'd cry, and I'd cry, and she'd go up there. And then finally I just said to her, at 9, I said, I can't do it anymore. I can't get up to bat. And I'm crying. And she's knitting. I don't think she's paying attention to the game. She's knitting. And she says, well, what's the worst thing it's going to do? I don't know. Kill you. So go. And I'm like, and I say to her years after, I go, Ma, like, you know, what kind of like mental patient says that to a 9-year-old, right? But at the end of the day, what's the worst thing it's going to do? Right? The worst thing that's going to happen is the next day, 20 years from now, you regret something you didn't do. Don't live in regret. Don't do, and look, things, sometimes you get rejected. Somebody doesn't tell you what you want to hear. Somebody doesn't see you the way you want to be seen. It's just another opportunity. It doesn't make it like it's not going to hurt. It's not, don't be, of course you're going to be scared. Of course. But do it anyway.
Courage is king. Other thoughts?
Queen.
Courage is queen. Thank you, Monica. Thank you. Anyone else have another thought on that?
I was in the assertiveness panel yesterday, participating in the audience, and somebody said, we're afraid, as human nature, we're afraid to ask for things, but start little, start in something that's not risky, right? The example they gave is you go to Starbucks and you ask for a discount. What's the worst that they could do is say no, right? But I do really like what you said. You have nothing to lose in going forward, but it is easier for some than for others. So if it's easier for you to take small bites, take small bites. Start asking for things that may not have as big a consequence in your mind, right? Because at the end of the day, the consequences are what we perceive them to be. They're real, but we create them in our heads first. And it's maybe starting with other things and getting that courage to ask those questions, getting that courage, and envisioning what's the worst scenario, right? Is it something that is palatable today versus, okay, will it matter in a year from now? And making those small steps to get you eventually where you want to get to.
I love finishing on courage. Let's have a round of applause for these amazing ladies. I'll just ask you to stay while we close out the program, because it's been a fabulous 2 days. And first of all, I want to thank all of you for the courage of coming today, but not just coming, participating. You've been such amazing participants, 201, how you engaged. You know, yesterday morning when I was observing as people were arriving, and it was kind of quiet, and people were kind of coming in, it's like, yeah, I don't know anybody, and you know. And as the day went on, it got louder. And as we got to last night, it got really loud, right? Because people were making connections. I heard stories that were amazing. And I have to share this one, because I heard a story of someone who met a person who said, they didn't know this person, and they said, that's the exact person who I need for this next position that's opening up in my company. And I'm going to schedule a meeting with her, and we're going to talk about it. That in and of itself was phenomenal. But let's take it one more. Sitting around the table, that discussion about that meeting was going to happen, and somebody else who wasn't even part of that group said, you know, I hear stuff like that can happen at events like this, but I never believed it. Wow. It happens. You make it happen. You make it happen by showing up. Don't just show up today. Don't just show up next year, September 24 and 25. Get it on your calendar, okay, for the 11th. But no, don't just show up today. Show up every day. Show up every day. We have a saying at BIA. When we get up every day, we put our boots on the ground, right? And we get mission focused, or a hedgehog. I don't know if anybody who saw that beautiful video that my team did for me yesterday. Yes. Thank you, Team BIA. You're phenomenal. At the very end, I'm not sure if you saw the hedgehog jump on the screen, right? The hedgehog is our line sight, right? The hedgehog is our centric circle. And it's funny, we have hedgehogs all over the office, right? But the hedgehog keeps us focused, and that's Jim Collins, good to great, right? But that's our North Star. Find your North Star. Use your voice. We need your voice each and every day, whatever vocation you were in, and outside of your direct vocation. Don't stay in that box that is your office or your building, right? Use your voice in your community. Use your voice to advance for yourself, for those coming up behind you, for the mission you stand behind. We need each and every one of you. A few more thanks. I want to thank all those amazing partners, unprecedented amount of partners. If I read that list again, we'd be here till 5 o'clock. Let's have a round of applause for those great partners, many of you in the room today. All our amazing speakers, of course, and last but not least, I said this a few times, the extraordinary BIA staff, right? We couldn't do what we do without the amazing team behind the scenes. Let's have a huge round of applause for them. With that, Cathey Regan, you won a prize, so please come up front later. I see you sitting in the back now, okay? So, by the way, on your way home today, please be safe. Take care of each other. Take care of your family. Thank you so much for being here. We will see you next year. Thanks.